These physical constants may be changing. We don't know. I mean, take the speed of light. We've measured it on one planet since 1906 and cheerfully extrapolate it to every corner of the known universe with no sense that there might be a problem there at all. Yet, if you're a critic of this, you can look at the speed of light as measured from 1906, and you will notice that the values have been slowly going up. It's apparently going slightly faster than it was a century ago. Well, people just dump on that and say, no, you poor moron, you don't understand. It's that the instrumentality has become more precise, and so the measurement may have changed slightly. Oh, yeah? Well, it seems to me in that case the points should cluster. How come the more recent ones are faster than the earlier ones consistently? In other words, it's not that we're getting measurements which cluster around a value, it's that we're getting measurements which are going out this way, toward faster. I think language is the key to making reality. I think our language is a very weak language. Computer languages may be more powerful, VRML or mathematics. But I believe the world is made of language. That's the magical belief. But then the challenge to that belief is, okay, wise guy, so how come the world isn't the way you say it is? Well, that's ungenerous. I think because it doesn't work quite like that. Consensus is set by societies, by millions of people. Reality is a phenomenon of many linguistically operating subsystems. Maybe if you and I were stranded on a desert island, we could get a reality going. We probably could, but it would surely be shattered when somebody showed up to take us home again. The documentation, well, there wouldn't be anything written, of course. It's earlier than that. But the documentation, it is well known that the Sahara was wetter in the past. Even as recently as Roman times, Pliny called it the breadbasket of Rome. And we know that human populations were out there. In the Tassili plateau of southern Algeria, there are rock paintings, rupestris paintings, that show shamans with mushrooms sprouting out of their bodies and in their hands. So we have mushroom use, we have evidence of mushroom use at the era of the great horned Paleolithic goddess. The presence or absence of monogamy and polygamy is debatable. So however, the archaeology of this area has not been well studied and won't be soon. Thanks to Islamic fundamentalism, Algeria is no place to do archaeology right now. Now, to the first part of your question, why was it human beings who ate the mushrooms? You had to use the mushrooms as a doorway to higher intelligence. You would have had to already come a certain distance down the path of higher animal organization. We were bipedal. We had a pack signaling repertoire. We had binocular vision. And the reason we used the mushrooms was because we were under nutritional pressure. There may have been other animals under nutritional pressure, but they may have been more tightly bound to their original diet, or they may simply have had behavioral organization that the mushroom couldn't dissolve or break through. There has been talk among evolutionary biologists about if there were no primates on this planet, what order of animals might occupy the conscious niche or be able to come in there. And interestingly, raccoons are candidates. Raccoons have have well-positioned eyes. They have a very complex hand, and years and years ago, I used to grow mushrooms, and I grew them by my own method, naturally, in jars. And I would have waste rye infected with jars, jars infected with mycelium-permeated rye, and I would put it out on the back porch at night, or I did once. And I awoke in the middle of the night to this terrific racket, and there were raccoons on the back porch. They could smell the rye infested with the psilocybin-containing mycelium. They could unscrew the lids and plunge their mitts into this stuff. And as I turned on the lights, I saw these little bandit faces with this mycelial crumbs on their little upturned muzzles, and they didn't. They wouldn't back off. They would. And the other thing was they were standing up on their hind legs. So they were standing on their hind legs, holding a jar, holding the stuff, and tottering toward me. So I just took one look and backed off. And for the rest of the evening, you could tell that they were approaching the orgiastic boundary because the carrying on, the sexual squeaking and squealing and thumping and pounding going on in the backyard was just incredible. So, they might be interesting test animals to put through this. Yes, Jacques Vallée was a UFO researcher. In the book that was mentioned, Passport to Magonia, was one of his earliest books on the subject. He's gone through a lot of changes about it. I think what's going on is that, in a sense, there is leakage from the future. This is a broad subject, and it's late in the evening, so I'll give it to you in headlines. But basically, science takes the position that nature is without purpose. In other words, nature has no goal. Nature proceeds forward according to the unfolding of chance and necessity. But I don't believe this. I think nature is an engine for the conservation of novelty, and that nature's purpose is to generate ever greater novelty, and that in fact history is the dawning realization that we are about to descend down a very steep novelty sink, as it were, into immense amounts of novelty. And this is why we image the other in the 20th century as the extraterrestrial, because out of the unconscious comes this image of the other as the extraterrestrial. I think we are in the presence of what I call the transcendental object at the end of time, and that religions call it the Messiah or the Maitreya, secularists call it utopia, millenarians call it something else, mushroom enthusiasts something else, but that we are in the presence of the transcendental object at the end of time, and that it casts an enormous reflection back through history, especially recent history. But any person encountering this backward-moving shadow of the transcendental object will attempt to interpret it in cultural terms that they can relate to. So if they happen to be a French peasant in the 11th century, they will assume that it's the Virgin Mary. If they're a sexual scientific rationalist in the 20th century, they will assume it's a spacecraft of some sort.